projects that I was managing ranged from about $5 million to $30 million in value.
What's the best personality type to be a project manager?
Being a self-aware project manager is the best, so it doesn't really matter.
Have you experienced something like that where it's very difficult to get a contractor on site and they just decide like, hey?
In our contracts, we do state that security clearances are a requirement. So if we sign that contract and then they say, oh no, I can't get it and I'm not going to.
In a lot of these government projects that we're used to managing here in Ottawa,
it's still similar to other industries. It's just more obvious because there's more news cycles about it.
Welcome to Mastering Management, where for the next 30 minutes, you can listen to this podcast, expectation free, and learn about mastering management through human experiences. This podcast won't magically transform you into a top tier project manager. However, I hope it'll inspire you to be more curious about your environment and ignite a desire to be a great project manager and deliver value into this world we all share. My guest today is Abraham Rollins, professional engineer, PMP certified since 2019, and he's currently serving as a project manager for the National Capital Commission here in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. Morning, Abe.
Morning, Mark. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thanks for coming. So let's start off and maybe you tell us a little bit about yourself and give us some context.
To start, I guess I grew up in a rural area, farming community, and aside from having a strong work ethic, because you have to work when you have to work to care for the animals, the crops, that kind of stuff. One thing that really stood out to me and kind of shaped how I approach work is that one year our neighbor George, he'd fallen off his horse, hit his head, ended up with brain trauma, was rushed to the hospital. But he was living alone, managing a large farm. He had over 100 cattle. So my dad and some other farming neighbors, they all got together and they pitched in and they took care of his farm while he was in the hospital. And this was during calving season. So that's whenever all the cows are about to give birth. So it was a very busy couple of weeks to all of a sudden not be able to take care of the farm on his own. But despite him being out of the picture, again, all the neighbors were able to chip in, help out, ended up being a successful calving season. He ended up commenting actually recently to my dad that it was perhaps his most successful calving season, even though he wasn't there himself. Yeah. And for me, it just stood out as a great example of that collaborative working spirit. Again, everybody pitches in together. We all help out, and we're able to take on something quite massive in a sense. It was not a small operation. Yeah,
what an amazing life lesson.
Yeah. So it's a good example from my dad and the neighbors.
And where was this rural area?
So it was about an hour and a half west of Ottawa.
Okay.
Yeah, so just in the Ottawa Valley area.
Okay.
Yeah. So I grew up outside of Ottawa. I ended up going to school in London, Ontario. I went to Western, studied engineering. So that's we studied to become an engineer. Whenever I graduated, I went to a large firm, Stantec. I worked there for a couple of years in urban land development, designing subdivisions, road networks, sewer designs, that kind of stuff. I eventually later switched into restoration of buildings. So went to a smaller engineering firm for a couple of years and then eventually had an opportunity at WSP to go work there as a project manager and help the local building science team.
What motivated you or inspired you to choose engineering?
So that was largely the recommendation of friends of my parents and high school teachers. I didn't have an exact plan coming out of high school, but they all recognized that I was good at math and I enjoyed problem solving. So I said, well, mix of those two things, sounds like engineering would be a good fit. So that's where I chose engineering. Funny enough, actually, I originally was thinking about, at least short term, being a long haul truck driver. I thought it'd be a great way to see North America, right? You can drive coast to coast in Canada, drive throughout the States. But at the same time, I knew that eventually I'd want to get married, settle down, have a family, and long haul truck driving didn't exactly fit the lifestyle that I eventually want with wife and kids. And I thought, well, it's not cheap to become a truck driver. There's training for that. And then if I'm only going to do it for a few years, it's maybe not the best return on investment. And so just went straight into university out of high school.
Good. Speaking of family, wife and kids, you have a wife, you have a brand new baby that just came out. Tell us about your family unit.
Yeah. So my wife, Candace, we've been married over 15 years now, 4 kids spanning 14 to newborn. So a bit of a spectrum there.
Good for you.
So newborn mostly sleeping through the night, but then the 2-year-old has recently started to get up again the middle of the night. She was sleeping through the night for about a year, and now she's not. So, just, word to all the newbie or would-be parents out there that I don't think I've had a full night's sleep in over 14 years. So.
Wow. Okay, that's encouraging because I'm expecting a little girl myself. In
So
June.
enjoy sleep while you can, and
Yeah. Sleep is big. I don't know about you, but in my role as a project manager, I find that well rested with a lot of sleep, and especially, we tend to manage larger projects, and you really have to be focused and give all your attention. So it's going to be interesting to go into this, with little to no sleep, and seeing how well we're going to be managing consultants and their problems, and the problems on site. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, thankfully there's a lot of parents in the work world, so you're also dealing with other tired people. So
exactly.
It kind of balances out.
Yeah. I'll have some grace and some understanding from my colleagues.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. It's good. Yeah. So what type of what kind of projects are you currently managing at the NCC? Tell us a little bit more about those projects and your experience working there.
Yeah. So at the NCC, I'm managing mostly restoration of buildings. So again, they have a lot of old buildings.
Maybe you could tell us about what the NCC is for the listeners that don't live in Ottawa, Ontario, which, the NCC is a crown corporation, big entity in the region in Ontario, in Canada, arguably as well.
Yeah.
But tell us more about it.
Yeah, so the National Capital Commission, they are, as you said, a crown corporation that they're responsible for managing a lot of land within essentially the capital regions. That's both Ottawa and the Gatineau side. So there's in Ottawa the Greenbelt, in Gatineau you have Gatineau Park as well. There's a lot of bike trails, hiking trails, those kinds of things. They have a lot of properties as well. Again, like on the Greenbelt, there's a lot of buildings in there that are owned by the NCC. Several buildings downtown are owned and managed by the NCC. Another one of their mandates is to maintain the official residences. So again, that's for the Governor General of Canada, that's for the Prime Minister, the leader of the official opposition party, as well as the Speaker of the House. They each have a property. Again, the idea being that it doesn't matter who you are in Canada, you can run and become Prime Minister, and a house is provided for you. So even if you're someone who lives far outside of Ottawa, you don't have to have the financial means to buy or rent a place in Ottawa. If you find yourself in a position you become Prime Minister or Leader of the Opposition, then a house is provided for you.
Interesting. And so what kind of projects is involved, or what kind of projects are you asked to manage at the NCC, seeing, all this, mainly, a gigantic property owner that the NCC is, and with a big mandate of protecting the Gatineau Park and the Greenbelt and the heritage value as well of all these buildings, because they're not, just standard homes. Most of these or all of these are heritage homes.
Yeah.
And big homes.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So whenever I first started, I was working on a bunch of the multi-use pathways. So if you're local to Ottawa, you may remember that there was a lot of flooding a couple of years back. The Ottawa River flooded, so it damaged a lot of the pathways along the Ottawa River. So one of my projects was to restore that, which wasn't just restoring the pathway, but it was shoreline stabilization to make sure that it's more resilient for future flooding. And then as well as looking at a couple of bridges that were in need of repair. And eventually I was switched over to the official residence portfolio. So the last year and a half or so, I've been primarily with the official residences or working on their properties. So it was restoration of a number of buildings. Again, just looking at as buildings age, they deteriorate in various ways. So we need to make sure that we're maintaining them to a safe and satisfactory performance level. So a project that you and I worked on together is called the Gate Lodge recapitalization. So that was one that it was an underutilized building That's right at the main entrance gate of the of Rito Hall, the Rito Hall grounds, and so that one's being refit up. It's envisioned to become an extension of the visitor center, like a welcoming place. But it was again well aged, so it needed to essentially be gutted right down to studs and then rebuilt.
Mm-hmm. To give an idea to our listeners, what size projects, would you say those are, and maybe some of the complexities and intricacies? Because, I'm familiar with what you're doing. We've had the opportunity to work together, and if I were to hear somebody say, "Oh, we're retrofitting a small building at the beginning of an entrance," it doesn't give it justice to the size of those projects and the complexities involved in those projects.
Yeah, true. Yeah, small is a relative term. So the projects that I was managing ranged from about $5 million to $30 million in value. Part of that is it's, again, being on secure grounds. Again, you have the leaders of the country, so there's a higher security aspect of things. So it's not always as simple as just show up with a truck, start working. There's a lot of other steps and stages that are required to, again, maintain that level of security and safety within the property. So it makes it a bit challenging, but again, like all projects, you look at the challenges and find a way to still deliver despite them.
Yes, that's right. I remember on an OR official residences project on the grounds, the greenhouse project, where the job, or it was a $6 million project to remove and replace all the windows of these gigantic greenhouses attached to the Rito Hall. And I remember the construction manager had identified the contractor that they wanted to use for the project. And there's not a lot of contractors who specialize in greenhouses. And I remember one of the particularities is that they didn't have any kind of security clearance. They didn't have an enterprise security clearance. They didn't have personal security clearances. But then we had to get them on the grounds to do the job. And often, and something that I've experienced working on government projects is these government security requirements. A lot of these contractors that we'll work with, and I shouldn't say a lot, but contractors outside of the national capital region don't have those security clearances and are also not super interested in having, an entity pry into their business to make sure that everything is, legit or to a certain standard where they receive that security clearance. So have you experienced something like that where it's very difficult to get a contractor on site and they just decide like, hey, I don't want to get the security clearance. So, and we've already signed a contract together. So,
Yeah. So in our contracts, we do state that security clearances are a requirement. So if we sign that contract and then they say, oh no, I can't get it and I'm not going to, then we do have the ability, we can rescind that contract and say, well, you're not meeting these obligations, so we're not proceeding further. Most contractors have been pretty good. Again, we're able to, if needed, fast track some security applications. So I've done that a number of times on projects that, again, compliant bidder, aside from not all of their staff having security clearances, but they have the ability to get cleared. It's still in the best interest of the Crown, the best interest of taxpayers to go with the lower bidder. So we fast track their security clearance such that they could proceed with the work in a safe and compliant manner. In the case that you're talking about with the greenhouses, it was a very specialized construction crew.
Yes. Yeah.
So again, not a lot in Canada, not a lot interested in this one-off project in a higher security zone. So we still, again, we have RCMP partners on the ground, so we engage with them. They were able to screen the workers, and as well, we looked at other mitigating measures, having security on site while the workers are on site to ensure that everybody is watched for and everything's proceeding in a safe and secure manner.
Yeah.
So there are other ways if absolutely needed, but again, it is a bit of an additional burden to take on that extra staff just for watching of staff. So we try not to do that.
And that adds to the complexity of these projects
Yeah.
and to the financial line where, it's not cheap to have to engage directly with the RCMP, get them to fast track this kind of security clearances. The cost, we don't see it, it's in the back end, but that's something that adds to the project considerably.
Yeah. Yeah, I can. And that's where, again, maintaining good working relationships is key. And again, understand hierarchy of. So I wouldn't, in this case, it wasn't myself personally as project manager, but others within the National Capital Commission are on a more regular basis in communication with our CMP counterparts. And again, leverage those relationships and find a mutually agreeable solution where we can proceed forward, because again, they understand that work does need to happen. We just need to make sure that the work is happening in a way that doesn't compromise site security.
Correct. So you mentioned a lot of, relationship management, keeping these good relations active to facilitate work. Tell us more about, this keeping good relations on projects. And something that I've noticed working with you is one of your strengths.
Yeah, thank you. For myself, I see it as projects, live and die by heartbeats, essentially, right? It's a project starts because someone with a heartbeat says, I want X. Projects are delivered largely through people. Yes, we have tools and AI, it's coming. But again, it's still people using AI, telling it what to do, or setting up how it's going to operate. And then even the end product is then going to be, provide benefit to someone or a group of people. So again, more heartbeats. So all throughout the project lifecycle, even before it's a project, through initiation, all the way through to closeout, and then turn over to end users, it's all about the people ultimately. So I try to keep that in mind with the project, is not just, I have this technical mandate and I'm going to focus 100% on the technical, but it's throughout this technical mandate to achieve all the requirements that I'm aiming to achieve. I need to make sure that my stakeholders are aligned, that the end users are going to be satisfied with whatever end product they get. So I do try to always keep them in the forefront of my thinking throughout managing a project.
So you work on, you don't work on just one project, you work on multiple projects at the same time. And that requires having a team. You have your consultants, but at the NCC you also have your in-house consultants or engineering team.
The designers.
Yeah. Correct. And then, more closely you have you guys call them project officers, but essentially project coordinators. How do you manage all these people and get their buy-in, on the project to make sure that they stay engaged and motivated to see this through the end?
I often think back to one of my favorite managers was really good at, again, looking at the person, the individual and their career within the project. So oftentimes, you might be in a project that becomes very challenging, or there's a lot of issues that crop up, and there can be a lot of frustration and anger and angst that might come as part of that. And she was always very good at taking that moment. Again, it doesn't take long, but just to even have a comment and say, hey, in 10 years from now, you're going to look back at this project and you're going to laugh, or it's going to be such a learning opportunity that you're going to talk about this for the rest of your career. And it's going to help train, junior staff as you start managing them. And she'd always, again, bring in that long range picture and view of things, how this fits into your total career, not just sorry, this sucks, do it anyway. So I try to maintain that a little bit. And as well for myself, I've studied and tried to better understand how people think, how they operate. We're not all wired exactly the same. So there's many tools out there. There's the Myers-Briggs type indicator. There's DISC. There's 6 types of working genius. I think you do the 4 archetypes is one that you're more familiar with.
Yeah.
So essentially they all take something very complicated and they put simple language to it to help you more quickly assess how someone might want to receive communication, how they might react to certain types of communication. And so I do try to remember that, one, I try to tailor my communication how I believe that whichever stakeholder or colleague or staff that I'm working with, how I think they will best receive that communication. And if it's a sort of a wider broadcast message, then I try to remember that there's essentially four main types of people, how they think or operate, and therefore I try to make sure I'm touching at least a little bit of the different communication methods that all four of those people would respond to or appreciate. Again, we dig into DISC as an example a bit more, right? Like the D is for the dominant or direct person. So it's like, just give me the bullet points. Let's move forward. Your I's are your influencers. They're a bit more of a people person. So be like, let's grab a coffee. Let's talk about it. I'd still follow up with an email afterwards to make sure it's documented. But at least, they respond better to that in-person, physical touch, like handshakes and in-person presence. Your S's are your steadies. They're kind of the calm people. They're great in a crisis because you can kind of drop a bombshell on them, and it's like, okay, now what? Like, how are we going to move forward from here? It doesn't really faze them too much. So again, if you have a problem, they're usually my first go-to of, hey, before I bring this wider, let's discuss this a little bit, and at least gives you that good sounding board where it's a bit safer. Whereas if you go to a D with a big problem, it's like, well, I pay you to solve this. What are you coming to me? It's like, right, I'll get back to you later. And then lastly, the C's are the conscientious. So they're more the process-driven people. So if you drop a bombshell on them, it's a bit more like, well, how's this going to impact the process of work? We had the whole flow chart of what we're going to do. What's going to happen now? So again, for all those different people, you communicate a little bit differently. For my C's, it would be here's the flow of work. This has come up in this stage. So we're going to add 2 steps, or we can now skip this step and explain it more in the flow of work. So they can better appreciate how it's going to impact work.
Mm-hmm. So you're quite knowledgeable, an expert in that field, and you're also working on another project outside of work that we'll touch on a bit later. But tell us from a project management point of view, and you've been doing this for a long time, and you're an expert at these personality types. In your opinion, what's the best personality type to be a project manager? What do you tend to see more of in the industry?
I'd say being a self-aware project manager is the best. So it doesn't really matter if you're a D, I, S, or C. Essentially, just how you would approach project management might be different. So again, if you're more like that D level or that direct tenacity, it's going to be, here's the bullet points, this is what I'm working on, I'm going to get it done. And that can be great to drive things forward. But if you're not careful as a D, then it means you're going to burn bridges, right? Your stakeholders aren't going to like working with you because it's, like on day one, we set this as the target. And as you and I know, projects can shift and change a little bit throughout. And the temptation of a strong D is, we set it on day one, I'm sticking to this, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But we do need that bit of flexibility. So for a strong D, it's having that self-awareness to go, okay, I'm naturally driven to just push forward. I need to stop and actually listen to my stakeholders, listen to my client whenever they say, I want to make a change. And I can instead inform them of, well, here's the impacts of that change. Do you still want to proceed with it? Because there's going to be cost, schedule, or scope changes to it. On the flip side, an I might be very people-oriented, very friendly, outgoing. They might be too open to accepting changes. And so again, it's making sure you document that, or you go back to, well, the original plan was this. Understand that if I accept this, like, yes, in the moment, I want to say yes to my client. They're my client, they're paying me.
No scope creep.
Yeah. But there will be an impact. So again, stepping back to say, okay, client, I really want to help you with this. I really want to take on that change. But are you okay that it's going to add 6 months and an extra $100,000? And again, make sure you have that conversation. Again, similar with steadies, they can be a bit more just accepting of. You come in and say, oh, we need to make this huge change. Just, okay, I guess that's what we're doing now. But again, make sure that you go, okay, before I just jump in and say yes, raise my hand and say, are we sure? Have we thought about X, Y, Z? How is this going to impact the project at large? And make sure you voice those concerns and essentially self-advocate if it does mean that it's a huge change or a significant additional work. Make sure, again, that that's being covered, budget, schedule, et cetera. And as well with our compliant, our conscientious, our Cs. Again, they can be very good at making the checklists and ensuring that the process is followed right. But again, taking that time to understand that processes might change. Again, there can be, that change of scope, change of direction, and they can sometimes be a bit rigid with similar to the Ds. So they're more task oriented. So it's no, this is what we agreed to. This is what I'm doing. That's now a change. Like, again, yes, change is okay if it's managed well.
Yeah. It's funny that you talk about change, because in a lot of these government projects that we're used to managing here in Ottawa, there are changes that are dictated by politics and what's going on, where there's instances, like especially during elections, where some go projects or very tight deadline projects are almost put on hold because we don't know who will be elected and whether this is going to be part of their
future budgets might be slashed
or
added to,
or even in the politics or in the intentions of the new government taking place. Like, will they want to continue investing in infrastructure, or are they going to cut investment in infrastructure and redirect it towards industry? So it's been interesting to see this unfold, or it's a different way of managing projects that we don't see outside of Ottawa. One of those particularities.
Yeah, I'd say it's still similar to other industries. It's just more obvious because there's more news cycles about it. Really, regardless of which industry you're in, there's ebbs and flows. It's just generally it's more gradual. It's not as abrupt. Whereas with politics, you've got news articles about it all the time. So there's a lot of, well, what if this, what if that? There's a lot of speculation happening. And then it is roughly a 4-year cycle. Generally a 4-year cycle unless there's an early election. And so it's, again, in one sense, it's a blessing that there's a known potential change, whereas in other industries, it's not always as easily forecastable, right? You can't say, oh, well, in 4 years exactly, there's going to be this impact to our industry.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just something that, we're able to foresee it, and therefore you do manage projects accordingly.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Thank you. So we touched on this a little bit, but you're building a business with your wife right now, and or your wife is your business partner. Yeah. That must be an interesting dynamic. Tell us more about your business.
So it's called Alloy Teams. The idea being that just as adding or subtracting different elements creates or impacts the performance and the behavior of an alloy metal, similar, whenever you add or subtract different behavioral characteristics or skill sets from a team, then that impacts the performance of a team. So it's kind of taking that, if you have like a Venn diagram, the intersection of my interests, where I've always enjoyed mentoring junior staff. I've loved facilitating roundtable discussions, that kind of thing. And then as well as we've discussed, I like diving a bit deeper into the behavioral science of things, how people approach work, how they think about work, how they show up, and how it's all different, and understanding that how you then have that mesh of overlapping behaviors and working styles can really influence the performance of a team. So as some examples that kind of influenced me to create this company, so I'll get back to Alloy in a second. So myself, I'm a bit more of like a wonder inventor kind of person. I'll think about a problem, I'll come up with solutions. The issue being that I can come up with 10 or 20 solutions, and then I struggle to determine which one's the best one to move forward. Really, all right, I got 10 possibilities. I don't know which one to move forward on. A coworker that I once had by the name of Kent, he was actually really good at discernment. He could make decisions quickly, but he struggled at inventing or creating solutions. So again, whenever we're in the engineering realm, if I got a problem, I'd come up with a bunch of solutions, but then I'd spend half a day to a day trying to figure out which one is the best. Alternatively for him, if he had a problem on a project, he'd take half a day to a day to come up with a solution and then move forward with it. But we found that if we just booked a 10 or 15 minute meeting with each other and say, here's the problem. In my case, I'd present a bunch of solutions, discuss what I'm trying to do. And you go, okay, one of those two are your best, or that one is the one to go with. Okay, perfect. I'm off and marching. Yeah. Conversely with him, Abe, we have a quick meeting. He discussed the problem that he's having on his project. I'd come up with a couple different solutions. He'd say, okay, I kind of like that one, but it doesn't quite fit because, and as we fill in the details, we refine the possible solution. And again, generally in about that 10, 15 minutes, okay, yeah, we've got the solution I need. Thank you so much. And then he'd go off and, complete what he needs to do. So we found there's really savings. And again, whenever you're trying to manage project budgets, if I can take a half day to a day of struggling through work and shrink that down to 15 minutes, that's a huge benefit to the budget. It's a huge benefit to the schedule because now we can actually push forward right away.
Yeah.
On the flip side, worked with a guy by the name of Steve that him and I were both inventors, but both didn't really have discernment. And so we'd kind of feed off each other whenever we come up with a solution for something, be like, oh, that's great, but have you thought about this? And we'd kind of keep building. We'd make this like super awesome solution. But if we're not careful, we'd spend $10,000 in time solving a $5,000 problem. And we're like, maybe that wasn't the best way to do this. And so again, learning, okay, if him and I are going to sit together, and sometimes you need that brainstorming session, we're like, let's put some sort of boundaries on it, right? We're going to book a 2-hour brainstorming session. At the end of 2 hours, that's where we stop.
Okay. And then you have to have an answer by 2 hours. I like that.
Yeah, exactly. So at least, again, you still have a brainstorming session. So it's not like I'm not going to work with him, but I am going to set limits and as well recognize that if him and I are both put on the same project, that project's probably going to suffer from cost overruns and delays because we're going to get sucked into like over inventing and not discerning and actually doing the work.
Yeah. One of the reasons that we're both doing this podcast is because, as PMP certificate holders, every 3-year cycle, we need to renew our professional or our license. And by claiming professional development units through trainings, through seminars, through giving back. Giving back is either mentoring or publishing articles, doing podcasts like this. So in the idea of this being an aspect of project development units called giving back, what have you received from project management, and what is something that you want to give back to project management?
For me, it's been great. Again, just before the podcast, we talked about how I obtain my PMP credentials. So I was able to do that through a group effort through what was my employer at the time. So it was nice to work with colleagues. We're both doing similar types of project management, going through to study for our PMP. I found that the PMP itself gave a great framework to, again, break down the elements of a project into its various components. But again, it is very, in one sense, abstract or high level because it's made to fit any type of project. Could be IT, could be a marketing initiative, could be, in our case, design and construction of physical assets. So working with the actual community helped bridge that gap between the concept of the project management body of knowledge and then the actual application in our type of project management. So again, it's great to have other people you can rely on or ask questions of, hey, again, like, oh, there's stakeholder management, but what does that actually mean? It's like, well, it means getting to figure out who are your stakeholders on the project and how you're going to engage them, when you're going to engage them. Again, working with colleagues, they might share spreadsheets of here's what I track whenever I'm looking at stakeholders, or just, hey, you need a subject matter expert in this. Here I can introduce you to that subject matter expert. I happen to know someone who can help, that kind of thing. So that's, I guess just a lot of resources and connections through the project management community. So that's been very useful. In terms of what I'd like to give back, again, as I said, I've been doing a lot of research on, a lot of reading on behavior types, working styles, that kind of stuff. And I found that's very beneficial in my project management practice. By learning those, it makes it a little bit quicker or easier to assess, essentially make an educated guess as to how I think someone might respond to certain types of communication and then adapt myself accordingly. So I think, again, sharing that knowledge and not just from an abstract perspective, but from what does this mean when managing a project? How do you actually apply it? I think that's something that I'd like to share back to the community.
Excellent. Well, thank you for coming today and recording this episode of Mastering Management. Thank you for everyone at home who or at work who listened. And yes, please make sure to tune in for episode 3, which will be coming before the next 3-year cycle. I promise that.